Well, creeps, I have done it yet again. I am in another random U.S. city, grave hunting some history, because why not? This time I am in Louisville, Kentucky. Why? I don't know. I like horses. I like bourbon as much as the next girl. And I especially love weird possible murder torture stories, which is something that pertains to this cemetery, which I think is really freaking interesting. So you might be asking yourself, hey, Malia, where are you? Creeps, I'm in Cave Hill Cemetery because it's gorgeous, because it's huge. The history here is amazing, and I'm going to grave hunt the hell out of it. I'm only here for a couple hours, so to show you appreciation, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let's get on with the show.
All across the globe, cemeteries and historic buildings are disappearing. The histories and names of those buried there and who lived there are in threat of being lost forever. I am on a mission to tell their stories. This is Grave Hunter.
Welcome to Louisville, home of the Kentucky Derby, the Bourbon Trail, America's favorite baseball bat, Thomas Edison's bitch-ass house, and the origin of the term sold down the river. This city has seen violence and racism on a scale many cities can't claim. From one of the largest slave trades to violent anti-German and Irish mobs, Louisville, named for King Louis XVI in 1780, has a rich history I'm excited to explore. Originally a farm owned by the Johnson family that was bought by the city when they thought it would be utilized for the railroad, the plot of land called Cave Hill, because of the cave on a hill, actually became the site of a pest house, an old-school term for a hospital for patients with infectious diseases. Most of those at the pest house would die, and in the beginning, their corpses were donated to medical students. However, with the growing number of deceased as the city continued to expand, they added a graveyard on the site in 1846 to accommodate all of their dead. The cemetery has become one of the most beautiful in the country and a true garden like the great graveyards of Europe. The 296 acres that make up this cemetery have over 120,000 current interments, with room for over 20,000 more. Good news if you visit and decide you want to stay.
What do scarlet fever, racism, and a quack pharmacist all have in common? This grave. Welcome to the Wilder family plot, built in honor of their daughter Minnie, who is very, very, very at the top, who died of scarlet fever at just age 7. They blame her dying of the fever on their black young girl that was working in the house. I do not know if she was enslaved. It was 1861, so it's possible. And essentially what was happening, I guess she was cleaning the girl's bedroom, Minnie's bedroom, and a fire broke out. And so she jumped on the bed because she was scared with Minnie and then doused it with water, which then got Minnie wet. And then apparently she died shortly after from the fever. So the parents blamed the young girl. Now the tragic irony here is that Edward, the daddy at the top, was a pharmacist, and he peddled everything that could cure anything except apparently scarlet fever. So I have found an unexpected grave. I found the grave of Nicolas Marscal, who designed the Confederate flag and the signature gray uniforms of the Southern Army. A little crazy considering what that flag has kind of become a symbol of, and you have to wonder if they would have been okay with that. I'm assuming yes, maybe not, hopefully not. It's crazy. It's what'd you do, Marscal?
To be clear, he did not design the current Confederate flag that has become synonymous with white supremacy. He designed the first one, however, he was a staunch Confederate supporter, so probably still not a great guy.
So I am super excited to have found the family plot of the Caldwell family. Now we are actually going to be visiting their family home. It's one of the most famous homes here in Louisville. And I'm excited to go because I'm a big fan of Elaine Caldwell, who did a lot for women, especially for the time. And her daughter, Grace, although she was way more traditional, was really fascinating because she actually went completely deaf and then ended up going to the same school Helen Keller went to. And she learned how to lip read so good, she could tell if you were mispronouncing words. So Just a really interesting family, really pretty plot, and the house is gonna blow your guys' mind. Cave Hill Cemetery is actually home to a lot of really kind of hilariously notable people. The woman who invented the little cucumber and cream cheese sandwiches for afternoon tea, she's buried here. The woman that co-wrote Happy Birthday is buried here. And also Muhammad Ali, along with Colonel Sanders.
Yep, that's right. KFC founder Colonel Sanders is actually buried here. And the funniest part of that to me is how his grave is the busiest in the cemetery, meaning he beats out Ali and the Frito-Lay magician Harry Collins. I guess KFC really is America's favorite chicken.
You know how you go to some cemeteries and you're like, this is just so beautiful, I can barely handle it? That is how I feel about Cave Hill. Look at this. Like, what am I in? Rose Red, House on Haunted Hill?
A cemetery this beautiful has to be haunted, right? Well, the alleged claims of paranormal activity aren't actually a lot. Strange considering the origin of the land, but the one thing that is reported is the ghost of an older woman who visits the children's graves.
So right behind me, this grave right here is probably the most controversial grave at Cave Hill. And the reason why is really kind of surrounding this guy's death. So this is the grave of Richard Heaton, who in 1924 was shot and killed. So that's not debated, that is how he died. However, there is one detective report that I found from 1924 when he died that talks about how he had kind of lost it a little bit and had actually captured a guy named Bill Gates, who he was worried was going to move in on his wife, and he rented a separate house with the intention of torturing and killing this guy, Bill. He had been stapled to a mattress, he was bloody, there was all of these surgical tools, and he ended up escaping and shooting him, and that's how he escaped. Bill escaped and he died. I've only found that report once though. There is no report of it anywhere else, so I don't know if the story is true. It's a good story. I'm gonna try to find out. I will do my research, but no matter what the circumstances, he was in fact shot. Now the question is, was he shot in self-defense or was he murdered?
Fun fact, creeps, it is true. Richard Heaton definitely plotted the murder and torture of Bill, aka William Gates, and he definitely shot him and ran free, so we can actually check this one off as true. Located in the picturesque St. James Court in Old Louisville is the Conrad Castle, or more technically, the Conrad-Caldwell home. This epic stone castle was built in 1895 for Theo Conrad, a French-born tanner who had grown up in an elaborate moat-surrounded home in France, along with his wife and 4 children. The house was designed by famed architect Arthur Loomis, who incorporated a ton of superstitious elements into the home, including the green man on the banister to ward off evil spirits. Theo died in the home of a massive heart attack in 1905 on the staircase. 4 years later, his wife Marie decided to sell the home to their friends, the Caldwells, who had actually bought their first home when the Conrads moved into the castle. William Caldwell was an ingenious engineer who ended up designing the water tank shape that we all recognize today. His company would later go on to design the Louisville Slugger bat and the Mickey Mouse ears at Disney World. William's wife Elaine was a huge champion of women's rights. Although she died before the suffragette movement came around, she did head organizations that helped women get jobs and gain independence. Their daughter Grace would contract scarlet fever at age 8. She would survive, which is a miracle, but go completely deaf by age 21. This didn't stop her from marrying, which was important to her since, unlike her mother, she was extremely traditional. The home as you see it today is in large part to Elaine, because although friends with the Conrads, she hated their style, so she redecorated the entire home. Before becoming a museum, the house became a home for widows purchased by the Presbyterian Church. Along with the ghost of Theo, many say 3 of the widows still haunt the home. Haunted or not, it's a truly magnificent example of Victorian architecture.
So I am currently at Eastern Cemetery, which is one of the oldest cemeteries here in Louisville. As you can tell, it's essentially just overgrown and abandoned. Now, this place was founded in about 1840, and it's a really important cemetery to the city, mainly because it's one of the first ones that allowed all races to be buried here in all denominations, except the true history of this place is a little darker. So I'm having to watch where I step because I'm sinking. So I'm gonna go back this way. So basically what happened was they started reusing graves without telling the people that were purchasing old graves or telling the family members, if they were still alive, of the descendants of the people that were buried there, that they would be reusing that grave. So the fact that they were basically illegally doubling up or tripling up or quadrupling up on graves on top of all of this, the overgrowth, the disrepair, the lack of care, the place pretty much closed down. So now it's just this living relic of some of Louisville's most unique, oldest, pioneer people.
The 28 acres that make up Eastern Cemetery contain about 138,000 bodies. That is roughly 18,000 more than Cave Hill, who has over 500 acres. That is obviously only possible because of the reuse of graves, not a practice unheard of around the world, but one that is usually something that is mentioned when you buy a plot. Historically, the cemetery was home to Louisville's first crematorium, and somewhere amongst the graves, buried under who knows how many bodies, is William Henry Stewart, a famous journalist who was born a slave and ended up becoming a teacher and devout abolitionist. A 2017 documentary was made about Eastern Cemetery called Facing East, and in it they claim the cemetery is the most overburied cemetery in America. Before leaving Louisville, I have to stop at a truly unique site. This is the Highgold House facade, named for the builder and owner, German-born Christian Highgold, who was a master stone carver. The home was completed in 1853 and was originally in the Point neighborhood. Although called Frenchman's Row, it was mainly inhabited by German and Irish Catholic immigrants. In 1855, tensions were rising with an upcoming election, and the Know Nothing Party, comprised of xenophobic Protestants, decided to form a mob of over 100 people and storm the neighborhood on August 6th, killing 22 people and injuring countless more in an event called Bloody Monday. The Highgold family survived the attack, but in an attempt to demonstrate their patriotism and save their house from further attacks, Christian carved patriotic scenes into the facade of the house, including then-President James Buchanan's bust. Christian died in 1865 and passed the home to his son, who abandoned it after multiple floods. The city decided to move the facade of the home to the entrance of the Botanic Garden, and in doing so, preserved an important part of Louisville history. It's a stone reminder of the ingenuity of immigrants and the hard road it has been for so many people of different races and creeds here and elsewhere in the country. Louisville is a great example of how even our more underrated American cities have important stories to tell. So next time you're here slinging down some bourbon, take some time to visit one of Louisville's cemeteries and say hello to the people that shaped this unique town.